where they're at and just try to help them at any point in which you can. And that's just really helped build up my compassion. And then I think also just being like way more efficient with my time. Like the days after my exam, when I have like a free weekend, like I get so much done because I've just been driven so much through med school to like just do so much. And then I think the last thing too is that it really helped kind of solidify my maturity as well. Like I love to goof off, and I'm always like joking around with my friends and stuff. And then it's kind of like enforce the idea that like I'm a medical student. Like one day I'm going to be a professional student, and like it's really made me mindful of like how I present myself and how I carry myself in public as well.
Awesome. Those were really informative answers. And I just wanted to follow up based on like each one of you guys' responses. But what do you feel like was the biggest lesson medical school has given you? Like, do you have like a story to go with that on like kind of like the biggest turning point you've had because of medical school and some like realization that you had during being a med student? That's okay. You can think about it for a bit. It's a hard question.
I think my turning point, I am a commuter, so I come from home, which is Sugarland. So it's a bit of a commute. And initially, my first semester, I was commuting via public transport, and that came with its own set of difficulties. And then in December, I finally bought a car for myself. And so that was just another, like it really made it easier. And I used to think that when I would get a car, I would go this place, I would go that place, I'd go to this cafe, I'd hang out with my friends. But like it is so different. Like I go to campus and I come home because I know that my time is so important and I can't just be, going around town doing whatever. Like I guess that was my turning point, that realizing that, I'm not like a kid anymore. I'm not an undergrad anymore. I need to like take things more seriously, I guess. And that's not to say that medical school is all serious. If you like follow me on Instagram, I'm like I try to do a fun thing every single day. So it's not all like serious, but just knowing when is the time to lock in is what's important.
Yeah, I definitely agree with a lot with what Naviha said. For me, I guess, my kind of turning point was like, just to give a little context, I'm kind of a shy person. I definitely tend to be little bit more reticent, and I don't really like rocking the boat much. Medical school has definitely slowly but surely started to beat that out of me. Because if all the resources can be there for you, but if you don't take advantage of it and like go after what you want, no one's going to give you anything, right? So if you want something, you have to go for it. You have to seek it out yourself. And I think that's what medical school really taught me personally. It's that, if you want to be this kind of person, make efforts to be that kind of person. If you want to learn this skill, go learn it. If you want to get this shadowing opportunity, go ask for it. If you want this research opportunity, go email it. So just having that initiative is something that medical school has really taught me personally.
I think for me, kind of in undergrad, I've always kind of been like a one-sided person. Like everything I did really well, like when it came to like studies and stuff. But I kind of would neglect like a lot of aspects of my other life as well. Like I wouldn't be going to the gym consistently. I wouldn't like I'd like neglect a lot of my like chores until after an exam or something. And then in med school, I kind of just realized that like you have to prioritize yourself. You have to take care of yourself. And I don't think I really had a turning point, but I've just been I've been setting aside time for myself. Like, because if I wanted to, I could easily study all day, all night, right? If I really wanted to. But just realizing that if you take care of yourself, like things get so much easier. You become more productive afterwards.
Okay, perfect. So I want to jump back into like the beginning of your journey of medical school. Kind of explain like the process or like kind of your story on getting admitted into medical school. What are like some things, what are some resources and experiences that helped you get into what you wanted to do? Helped you get into like your field and the school itself?
Um, so being a U of H student, I'm sure like you guys are familiar with like HPAC, I guess. Like that was, I guess, where I started like my application. There was a class I took. It was HON, I think 3399. It was like it's called Narratives and Expressions. And they help you, like the professor helps you craft your personal statement. Like you spend the entire semester just working through and refining your personal statement. So I took that the fall before I submitted my HPAC. And so I think that really helped me in terms of crafting my application. In terms of extracurriculars, I started undergrad during COVID year. And so just consider like I guess that first year to be, I don't want to say wasted. I think I still made the most of the opportunities that were there for me. Like I was involved in some like remote research opportunity. I did that my first year. Second year it was more like community involvement and I finished all my prereqs then. Then the summer after my second year was when I took my MCAT. My final 2 years of undergrad were doing research at an OCHEM lab at U of H with Dr. Gilbertson. I don't know if you know him, but he's amazing. Um, and then the summer before, like my senior year, was when I applied. I tried to get in all my materials pretty early. Like 1st of June was my deadline to submit my primary, and then mid to late July was when I submitted my secondaries. I heard back pretty early, like August-ish, for interview invites. For McGovern in particular, I interviewed like end of September, and then Alhamdulillah, I was admitted in October. So I was able to pre-match here. So my Alhamdulillah, I can say like my journey even through the application process was pretty stress-free because I was able to just kind of chill and enjoy my senior year after I knew that I was admitted because this was like one of my top choices. So, yeah.
So also started undergrad during COVID at UTD. Um, Me, I do think, it did feel a little wasted. The one thing I did do during that year was that I was on the debate team, and that's something I kind of did since high school. So that was kind of one of my longitudinal things that ended up being a pretty big part of my application. I kind of spent, you know, most of the freshman year doing that. In sophomore year, that's when I began to join a research lab, which I spent for 3 years there. So again, another kind of longitudinal thing. I managed to get a decent amount of publications out of it, which I was very happy about. I think that definitely helped me stand out in a lot of my in like, within the interview pool. Junior year, I did, look into the HPAC at my school. We have a similar thing. We don't have a separate writing course, but we do have, a lot of the same things that you would expect an HPAC to have. Went through them, got some feedback on my personal statement as well as my interviewing. And that's kind of where I started my clinical experience. In hindsight, if I were to think back, I kind of wish I started my clinical experiences a little earlier because I think that was one of the weaker parts of my application. But at UTD, there's an EMS course where you can kind of get your EMT certification, and so I ended up doing that and then kind of using that a little bit to then shadow in emergency departments. That was pretty interesting. I continued doing extra emergency department shadowing in the summer of my junior year as well as in the fall of my senior year. I submitted my TMDSAS like the primary in like I want to say June, and then AMCAS a couple weeks after that. I got my secondaries and I finished those end of July, beginning of August. I also heard back pretty soon. I heard back from McGovern a little bit later, I think around October, and then like interviewed in November. And then luckily, before the semester ended and we all went on winter break, I pre-matched to McGovern as well. So that was very awesome. My winter break that year was, best time of my life. So again, also pretty stress free once you can get that pre match. But yeah, that was overall my experience.
So for me, I started my freshman year kind of just focusing on school, really. Like, I didn't really do much extracurricular wise. I like volunteered here and there at like one of our hospitals at UT. Um, and then after that summer, I just took like summer classes during that summer. I didn't really do much still. And it was sophomore year when I started like talking amongst like my peers, and I realized that like everybody had done so much for their application, and I just felt so behind. So I like really made it my goal to like make sure that following summer or even like the next semester, like I was gonna do everything. Like I finally like started cold emailing a lot of labs because at UT Austin, it's like there's so many pre-meds there who start out as pre-meds that it's like insanely hard to like find opportunities like that. So you really have to like cold email anyone you can, and the first lab that accepts you, like you kind of just have to go with that, even if it's like not something you're really interested in. So I started working at a lab the second semester of my sophomore year, and I had a lot of stuff lined up for that summer, the following summer. But then the pandemic hit, so all my summer plans were now just canceled, and I had to like really scramble for the first thing I could find to like fill up that summer. And thankfully, I found this amazing opportunity where I was working for the city of Austin, like their public health department, and I was one of like the first line people who was swabbing people for COVID just across the city. Like I started out as like one of those like people in the parking lot that would swab like the hordes of cars that would come in like the summer heat, and then I eventually like moved to traveling to different like nursing homes and stuff and swabbing the entire like floor as well. And it was a really cool experience. And honestly, I'm glad. I feel like it even beat what I had originally intended to do. So I kind of kept doing that my junior year and a little bit during my senior year as well. Um, my lab still, I wasn't able to get back into it because it was kind of like an in-person thing, and UT Austin had like forbid like all non-essential research from happening if it was in person. Um, so my junior year, I was just doing that. I was just doing the COVID stuff. Um, Senior year, same thing. Um, and then I took my gap year. And basically, when I took my gap year, one of my biggest motivations for doing it was just that, like, I feel like the pandemic had just stolen so much of like my undergrad like career that like I was gonna be going into my application with like such a giant hole in like clinical experience, volunteering, shadowing, and whatnot. So during my gap year, that's really what I tried to do. Like, I tried to just maximize like the purest like form of clinical experience I could get, and what I settled on was a dialysis center because it was just something that I was really passionate about. I was just really passionate about like diabetes and hypertension, and both of those things kind of lead into like kidney failure in general. And so I kind of tied all that into my application, and I had to apply during like right after graduation. So it was things were a little stressful then because I was trying to enjoy my graduation while also trying to write my like my essay, my personal statement. And it was just like everything was just happening back to back. It was like I graduated and then I started my job. All of that while I'm still trying to figure out my personal statement. I figured out my personal statement like really last minute and ended up submitting at the end of May. I got my first round of secondaries like mid June, and then I got my, or I guess mid July, I think is when I got my first set of secondaries, and then I got my first interviews in like early August, and it kind of spanned all the way up until October, and then thankfully I pre-matched at UTMB in November, and so that kind of eliminated my stress of whether or not I'll be a doctor or not. And then eventually I matched into McGovern because I ranked it over UTMB. And yeah, that's my story.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for all of those informative answers. The next question is, how did you kind of decide what school you wanted to apply to? And overall, like at the end, what made you choose McGovern over like every other medical school?
For me, it was pretty simple. I'm from Houston. I did high school in Houston, I did undergrad in Houston. I'm doing med school in Houston. I will probably do residency in Houston. So it was pretty easy for me. I'm so glad that I was able to match at a Houston school, but it was also just the fact that I really emphasized my ties to Houston in my application, whether it was in my primary or my secondary. Like I made it very clear in my application materials that I plan to stay in Houston. So yeah.
Yeah, generally prioritize Texas schools. I knew I wanted to stay in state. Um, Ideally, I wanted to stay in Dallas, but I ended up coming to a Houston school instead. But that's okay. Houston's pretty nice too. Um, Out of state, I prioritize a little less. I think in general, it's kind of hard to match out of state if you're a Texas resident or a Texas student because they kind of all assume that you'll come here. Tuition's cheap. There's 90% in-state requirement for these schools, so they have a lot of seats open for Texas people. So yeah, most part I prioritize Texas schools, and then if I ever applied out of state, it was for pie in the sky schools I probably wouldn't get into.
Yeah, I made the mistake of applying to out of state, and I honestly regret it. Like, I could have honestly maximized my time a bit more and like really just hone in on like my Texas application. But it was kind of like as soon as I finished my Texas application, I just tweaked it a little bit to apply for like the national ones as well. But honestly, like I wasted like a week or two just trying to like tweak it. Honestly, regret it. And then even the secondaries too; those took forever and costed so much to do. Just for me to not even get a single interview invite from any of the out-of-state schools. Um, but in terms of, I mean, I think we all kind of share the same sentiment. Like we all just wanted to be where we grew up from. So I really wanted to go to San Antonio's Long School of Medicine, and if not, go to Dell Medical School because I had gone to UT Austin. I didn't get the interview from San Antonio. It's unfortunate. I got an interview from Dell. So the way I ranked it was Dell, McGovern, and then UTMB, which is the school I pre-matched. And I knew that I didn't want to go to any other schools, so I ranked them all below UTMB. And the reason why I ranked McGovern over UTMB was just that Houston just has way more opportunities than Galveston ever could. Better food as well. Yeah.
Okay, and then the next question is, throughout your journey as a pre-med student, were there any challenges that you faced? I'm sure there are some. And then how did you overcome them? And how did you use that as like a learning lesson to make you a better student, a better person?
I think like there's so many different challenges. I mean, like first there was COVID. It was hard, like that be just being there like that entire year, just not being able to really work on your work on what you could be doing to make your application better. And then I think my second year, the second semester, I really stacked up a bunch of prereqs in a single semester, like OChem 2, Physics 2, Biochem 2, and Human Phys, and another class all in one semester. And so my grades weren't super great that semester because I was taking so many difficult classes at once. It was really hard to find clinical experience because you need like a certification and that takes a certain amount of time. I think honestly, the overarching theme of the challenges that I have faced was just given who I am right now, will it be enough for me? Or like, will this mistake that I made be like the difference between me going to med school or not? Like, it's so easy to get into that mindset. But I think it's important to remember, of course, that everyone's human. Yes, it's harder to get into med school now, but like it's not impossible. You just need to be genuine. You need to do your best. And like it's not about the number of experiences, but the quality and whether you can be able to talk about them. So you don't need like, 1,000 hours of volunteering and 5 different shadowing experiences or like 20 publications. It's literally like, for instance, my research, no publications, maybe like one presentation that I literally did, I think, after I interviewed everywhere. So it didn't even contribute to my application. Um, Clinic hours, I don't know, maybe like not that many. In numbers, I don't think I was the strongest application, but I think in the way I presented myself, my essays and my interviews, I think those made the difference for me. Um, and so yeah, just believing in yourself, I think, would be the way to overcome challenges.
I don't really have too much to add. I will definitely emphasize that finding clinical experience was a little bit of a struggle at first for me, until I kind of, got a whole certification in EMT and then kind of use that. But yeah, I also will emphasize the quality over quantity thing. If you do what you like and you do it for a really long time, it just makes the rest of the process so much easier. Your essays will be stronger, your little descriptions of your activities in TMDSAS will be stronger, your interviews will be stronger, and you'll just come off as a much more genuine person with a real drive to do things.
I think for me, one of my biggest gripes of being just like a pre-med in general was that like anyone you talk to who was like a fellow pre-med, it was kind of like the blind leading the blind. Like so many people would give such bad advice, but like they would just kind of like scare everybody else into like kind of following that advice as well. Like I remember that there was a guy in my like undergrad who was like, yeah, like you don't need to do like any like extracurriculars, like you just need to have a good MCAT score. And then the same guy like still is struggling to get into med school, like it's stuff like that. I think another thing was just like having FOMO in general, like here, like when I look at my class, like my current med school class, everybody has such a different strength in their application. Like some people have so many publications, some people have so many clinical opportunities, some people volunteered and did like I don't know, like something abroad, like teaching people abroad, stuff like that. So just realize that like you just really need to like focus on your own strengths, if that makes sense, and don't let other people's strengths like deter you from anything really.
I wanted to ask about your interviewing process. Was there anything that you felt kind of stood out from your pre-medicine journey in your interview? Like, was there something that you felt like your interviewers started to really engage with?
I think I guess three things that stood out to me. In every interview, like obviously they ask the first question, tell me about yourself. You should be able to give like a good 30-second elevator pitch about yourself, including things that are educational, professional, and also just like that make you seem human, like some hobbies or something you like. So practice that. If you have research, every interviewer asks about your research experience, and like what you did. So make sure you know well what you did in the research or volunteering or whatever they end up asking you. Anything on your application, be sure that you can explain it well and that you can make it sound interesting. Because if you're just kind of rambling on about some scientific topic, like it's not as effective as you talking about your contribution or what you enjoyed about it. That tells them more about you as a person. Another thing would be in the end when they say like, do you have any questions? Do come prepared with questions. Research your interviewer beforehand. Research the school beforehand. One question that I would ask that I liked, I would be like, okay, as a faculty or as a student, whoever, based on whoever my interviewer was, how do you feel supported by the institution? Or what would you say is your favorite thing about this institution? So like show that you're engaged with wherever you're interviewing. Another thing, I had one more thing in mind. I feel like there are some, like at some schools you do get like context clues as to how you did in the interview. Like they'll tell you, oh, I liked like you, like that sounds super interesting. Or like some will even say like straight up like, oh, I really want you to come here. So there's that. And then the last thing that I'll say is that when you're going into the interview, just know that on paper, like you've already passed their check. At this point, they just want to see what you're like as a person. So don't go into your interview being like, oh, but like I'm worried about my MCAT score. I should talk about my MCAT score. Or oh, like I don't have that many clinical experiences. I should talk about why that is. You've already passed like the number. They just want to see how you like what how you are as a person and whether you fit with like whatever culture they're trying to promote at their school.
Yeah, definitely agree with that last point. Uh, Once you get to the interview stage, like your other stuff starts to matter a lot less. It's really about how good of an interviewer you are. So if you're like me and you struggle to be a human, do practice being a human. It's very important. If you come off as a robot or if you come off as a psychopath, which a lot of pre-meds are, unfortunately, then it will be a difficult time getting into medical school. So definitely practice that a lot. Practice all your answers. Have all your questions ready to go. One thing that I think helped me was that I had a personal story of my own experience with the healthcare field. I had a bit of a congenital condition that needed a little bit of specialized treatment, and so I kind of used that to tell my story and or like get my story started to be able to kind of flow into the rest of the interview. So I think that really helped me a lot. One question I did ask that I thought helped me was actually, what's one thing that you would change about your institution? Uh, one small flaw that you want or that you want to see a little differently. I think it gets them kind of thinking about, what are the strengths and what are the rank the schools afterwards. If there's something that you're particularly looking for in a school.
For me, when it came to like writing all my essays and everything, like my secondaries and stuff, I made it very like story driven, and I think that kind of gave all of my interviewers like an alley oop in a way of like what to talk about. Like even some of my like my letters of recommendations came up as well. Like they just kept on talking about certain times when this happened. I like another thing like in one of my main essays, I talked about just like my love of food and like how food like kind of just relates to health and like community and bonding and whatnot. Um, and I literally had an interviewer ask like, "Oh, just like what do you love to cook?" And then she wanted me to walk her through my recipe, and that was actually my McGovern interviewer. So, and then I think that really helped. Like she kind of just wanted to like see first of all how well I can teach in that moment, right? Like I didn't have a written down recipe. I kind of just eyeball it all, and she just wanted to see me apply that skill and to see if I can back up what I'm passionate about. Like, and I think passion is like such a big part of the interview as well. Like, if they can just see any form of passion, like you'll easily get in. Like, that's not a big deal. I didn't really ask many questions. I think, or I probably didn't ask the best questions. It was probably just like a whatever, like, you know, uh, copy paste question from Reddit or something. Like, but yeah.
Okay, perfect. Jazakallah khair for all of those super helpful answers. So just for everyone and like just for the audience, we are gonna start doing audience Q&A at 6:45, inshallah. So I just wanted to ask one question, and honestly, just one person can answer this. But what is the difference between pre-match offers and match offers? Or yeah, can you describe pre-match versus match?
I'll take it, I guess. So this pre-match match thing is a Texas specific invention that they've made up. So basically, you have your interview, and then after the interview, there's this pre-match period where schools can decide whether or not they want to give you what is functionally an early admission. If you get a pre-match, you are you guaranteed have a spot at that school. Now, there's a match that happens afterwards. I think it's in like February when you have to submit your list, and then in March the results come out. If you have the pre-match already, then pretty much any school that you rank below the pre-match, like you're not going to go there. Because your pre-match is already above those schools. If you rank any schools above the pre-match, that's kind of where, there's a bit of a wiggle room. If you get into one of those schools, you then, lose your pre-match from the other school, but you got into a better school that you wanted. So then, that doesn't matter anymore. That's really how it all works. Basically, it only matters if you rank a school that you didn't pre-match at higher than what you pre-matched at. Now, if you didn't have any pre-matches, that's okay because you can still get into the match. There's lots of people who did. But then, at that point, it's a little bit, dicier. You're not exactly sure. You have a little bit less certainty as to where you're going to go. If you don't get into the match, then there's a waitlist process, and then I think that's also based on your match list. Though I can't confirm that because I didn't have to go through that. If that wasn't clear, please ask questions in the Q&A. We'll be sure to clear it all up for you.
I do have a follow-up question for that. You mentioned that you can rank schools above your pre-match offer, and if you get into a school above your pre-match offer, then you lose your pre-match offer. What happens if you don't rank your pre-match offer at the top and you don't get into the ones above it? Do you still lose the offer, or is it there?
No. If you in my case, I ranked McGovern third, right? And I didn't get into my number 1 or number 2 school. So then I just went to McGovern at the end of the day. You basically then match at McGovern.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Okay, so we have 1 minute, and I did want to ask one last question to kind of close up our panelist questions. And honestly, one person can answer this. What is something you wish you could tell your past college self? So currently everyone here, obviously aside from the panelists, are college students. So is there one piece of advice you could tell your past college self, something that you wish you did more, something you just wish you focused on more?
I can make it real quick. Honestly, I wish I read more. I feel like a lot of people go into the MCAT and they kind of just bomb I forgot the reading section or whatever. And I felt like, the car section. And I felt like the people who just read as a hobby, they just did so well on it. And I just went in and just took the hit, and it was fine at the end of the day. But I knew if I just read a bit more, it would have been so much easier.
Okay, Jazakallah khair. Now we're going to move on to audience Q&A. So anyone in the meeting, if you guys have a question, you can go ahead and unmute. Aisha.
Assalamualaikum. Okay, my question is, how much do matter when applying to mid school? Would you say, okay, first option, do they focus more you started freshman sophomore year with A's and B's, and then you're going up and you're having A's? Are they monitoring your progress, or is it more important to have A's?
Aisha, can you repeat your question because you're going in and out a little, or you can just text it in the chat.
Wait, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
I was saying how important are grades during application? So do they focus more on you start freshman and sophomore year out with A's and B's, and then as you go to your senior year, you're progressively getting better, or versus making all A's at all times since freshman year? Does that make sense?
Okay, so while grades do matter, I kind of mentioned, I did slip up in my sophomore year a little bit. It wasn't terrible. I mean, I didn't get any C's or anything. It was nothing below B's. So grades do matter, but I think it's not the end of the world if you do get a low grade on one section. And there's actually a section on your application where you can explain are there any parts of your application that you'd like to explain. So I think it's not somewhere to be oh yeah, I got a C because I wasn't paying attention or something, but it's more just it's an opportunity to actually write an essay. You can say oh I don't know, you can craft it into a learning experience. You can write that oh, I was really struggling, I was doing a part-time job, I had other things to focus on. And so you can don't make it as a thing to make excuses, but try to, you do have the opportunity to explain yourself and also make yourself a better applicant, even if you do have a few low grades. It's not an all A's and B's, that B's are fine. I think personally, I think they're fine, but yeah.
Yeah, and one thing I just wanted to add is that like a lot of the schools will use like a preliminary like screening thing based on just like overall GPA or like overall science GPA. So if your GPA is like not that high, you might just get like not screened just by the computer itself. Like they might not send out the secondaries just based on that alone. Not, I mean, not to scare anyone, but like once you get past that, once you get the secondary interview invite, and they're starting to like actually review your application, then they can start looking at the trends and kind of use that to differentiate between you and somebody else who has like a similar GPA. You know, if somebody I've heard just having an overall upward trend is like really important. If you do have a lot of bump ups here and there, like you shouldn't do like really well in the beginning and then just like neglect your senior year or something. You know, like that's a red flag in itself. But I mean, it's understandable if you have like a rough start at the beginning because you know we're all just transitioning into school. You know,
Okay, so the next question is in person from an attendee, and the question is, what is you guys' best recommendation for studying the MCAT, especially if there's a month or so left before the exam?
Is it possible for you to turn the camera on so we can kind of see the people?
Yeah, we can do that. So actually, we have a projector, and so it's displayed in a certain way. But yeah, I don't know if we can turn the camera on if you'll be able to see everyone.
If you can't, don't worry about it. I was just wondering if you could, maybe.
We can. I'm sorry.
To answer the question though, the MCAT, I self-studied. I don't think you really need like any sort of fancy course or anything. I think the most important thing, what, you know, those resources really charge you for is making a study schedule for you and like accountability and staying consistent with it. So just make yourself a study schedule and stick to it. Um, I used Kaplan. I used UWorld. It's pretty basic. There's no need to like, try to look at every single resource out there. Just stick to the like few like basic, like tried and true ones and just stick to them. Um, if you're short on time, just really you don't have to, I guess, read the entire Kaplan book. Just you should know what subject you need more help on. Just stick to those things. Do a lot of practice questions. Use there's like an AMC student bundle thing. They have like questions and practice tests written by the AMC. So try to prioritize doing those because those are from the source. They will help you the best. And the last thing I'll say is like it might seem like a lot, but like studying for the MCAT, I think will prepare you for how you'll be studying in med school. So yeah.
I'll echo a lot of that. You don't really need a course if you can hold yourself accountable. Hopefully, by now you have figured out how to take multiple choice tests. If not, you had better because there are a lot more multiple choice tests in this pathway. My resources were UWorld, the Princeton set of books, not the course, just the books, the content books, and then the AAMC like official practice tests. I saved those for last after I did my content review because I think those are the most reflective of what your actual score will be. So I think the way I did it was, I did a little bit of UWorld just to kind of get used to the style of questions that you have for the MCATs. Um, then I did like a lot of content review, and for that you don't have to read every single book, just the ones that you're the most weak on. Like personally, I don't even think I touched the Gen Chem book personally because I felt very good on general chemistry, but I was very weak on say physics or sociology because I never really had any like in-depth coursework on those things. Once you get those, you can kind of go back to UWorld just to kind of test and like on that specific subject, make sure you got it down. If you didn't, go back until you have a pretty good foundation in every single section of the exam. And then finally, you can move on to the AAMC exams and take those as if you were taking a real MCAT, just so you can practice time management, improve your endurance, and just get yourself ready for the actual exam. I think that should be pretty sufficient.
For me, I would say don't be scared of following your own schedule. I know for most pre-meds, it's like the strategy is like take it like, I don't know, I guess like during like a winter break or like during your sophomore year and stuff like that. For me personally, I just wanted to make sure I've hit all of my like core prereqs first, so that I could go into the MCAT with like a really strong foundation. And that kind of like helped push me into taking my gap years, because I took it in the summer of my junior year. And another thing I want to say is that like set yourself up for success, right? Like if you need 3 months to study for the MCAT, take those 3 months, right? Like don't try to squeeze it in the winter if you're gonna like, you know, not really touch it much during the semester, right? Like just set yourself up for success by giving yourself the most amount of time possible. Questions is like the best way to learn. I really use UWorld, and I use like Kaplan as my content review, the books, and yeah.
Okay, awesome. If anyone else has any questions. Okay, we have one more question, or two more questions from in person. The first question is, what was your undergrad major and kind of what scale was your GPA? So we have an idea of like what kind of the preferred GPA is when it comes to med school.
So mine was the like on HBS, biomedical sciences. My GPA overall was like, I want to say 3.89, something like that. So yeah.
My major was in molecular biology. I had a 4.
My major was just in regular biology. I think my overall GPA was like a 3.92, and my science GPA was a 4.
Okay, and then the next question is, when preparing for the MCAT, how long did it take for you to be ready or to feel ready to take the test?
Wait, I want to add something to like the previous question. Like all of our GPAs are super high, but don't let that like discourage you. Like look at the just search it up, like it's publicly available info, like the average GPA for each school. And for like I think McGovern, it's somewhere around like 3.7 or something like that. Like you don't have to be like a 4.0 student to get into med school. I just wanted to like put that out there. For MCAT, I studied for I think I started June 1st. I took it August 20th. And during that summer, I did nothing else except for like a 1 week, like I was like a summer camp mentor. So, yeah.
Same, 2-3 months was fine.
Yeah, it took 3 months. I did like 1.5 months of content review and then 1.5 months of just questions.
Okay, perfect. We have one more question in person.
I was gonna ask, how did you guys like build relationships with like professors, or like with, to what extent is like building a relationship with professors as an undergrad important for, I guess, applying for med school?
I think it's pretty important because they're going to be the ones writing you the rec letters. I think honestly, you don't have to do too much to establish a relationship. It's more so just being courteous, you know, like saying hello, introducing yourself, you know, like making an effort to talk to them. It especially helps if you're in like a small classroom. If they're a science professor that does research, get involved with a research project. That's like an auto connection with them. They'd be a perfect letter writer as your PI and someone who's taught you. Um, yeah, it's overall pretty important, and it's not too difficult. Like for me, it was mainly just like I don't know, like making a joke with them, or you know, like something. It's just general. Just be human. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll echo that. Very, very important. They're going to write your letters. Your letters are a big part of your application. My 3 letters were my debate coach, my PI from my lab, and the science professor that I TA'd for. So, you know, you can get letters for your activities, and if they and you know that's going to be very helpful. just look for ways to get involved with faculty. I think that'll help go a very long way in making your application stand out.
For me, I think my letters were honestly like a really big strength of my application, and I kind of went in throughout undergrad like really focused on the connections that I make with these professors. So like I sought out research with the intention of getting a good letter of recommendation. I sought out 2 TA opportunities so that I could ask them for letters of recommendation. I asked one of when I was doing my COVID job with the public health department. I asked my direct manager for a letter of recommendation. And one piece of advice I want to give is that people are really bad at writing letters of recommendation because most of the time they'll just rehash your like CV, right? There's not much you can really say from that. So one thing I really want to say is like one thing I did and I think what really helped was like I wrote out like experiences that I experienced from my own perspective. Like, oh, like, you know, like for my COVID job, like I interacted with this patient and I learned this thing from that patient. I gave that to my letter writer and they just rehashed that in the letter. And that came across in my interviews. Like they literally asked like, oh, like one of your letter writers said you were so like compassionate, like with one of your students that you TA'd for. Like how did you do that or something? You know, it was something like I had to just physically like remind my professor like what I did, what I experienced. Because if not, they're just gonna copy and paste some like generic template if you don't know them that well.
Oh, one thing I'd like to add as well. Don't be shy about asking for letters. Assuming you did good work for them and you put in effort, like they get it. They know that you need the letter. They're frankly expecting that you'll probably ask them at some point. And most people, assuming you did good work for them and you know you show up, put in effort, they'll be glad to write it. So don't be shy.
Okay, Jazakallah khair. If anyone online has a question and they want to come off mute, or they can just put it in the chat, inshallah. Yes, Aisha, go ahead.
Did you guys take like only one try at the MCAT or like more than one until like you got the score that you wanted?
That was my goal, one and done. I just took it once. My score was like sufficient. I think the goal that I had was to score above the national accepted matriculated average, which was at the time like 511. And so since I did better than that, I was like, okay, I'm not going through that again. So yeah.
I also took it once and I got a pretty good score. I was happy with it.
Yeah, I also take it once as well, and I say like they have like the full lengths or whatever, and they always say like your actual score is gonna fall within your range of your full lengths, and I was happy with my range and whatnot, and I fell in that range, so yeah, I was happy with where I was.
Okay, so I don't think we have any more questions as of right now, but to kind of wrap it up, do you guys have kind of one piece of advice that you want to close off the panel with? Anything that you want to tell your fellow, like our fellow college students here?
I think I'll just say like believe in yourself. Don't undersell yourself. Be more confident. Own your experiences. And since this is MSA, I can say it like make dua. Like that really helps, I think. I went to Umrah shortly before applying, like during Ramadan, and that was like top of my dua list just to like pray for me to get into med school. And it happened, so alhamdulillah. But yeah, just like believe in yourself, believe in God, and you'll set yourself up for success.
Be really passionate about what you do. If you have passion, it will come off in your interviews. You will really stand out. You'll love what you do. You'll be a much happier person that way. And I think that's what a lot of people are ultimately looking for. Are you passionate? Do you have drive? So I think that's really important. Longitudinal experiences really help with that. They demonstrate your passion. So just do things that you actually like and then, you know, really sell them.
I guess for me, if it was meant to be, you're gonna get it. That's all I can say. You're gonna get it.
Okay, Jazakallah khair for such an amazing panel. I think everyone has definitely benefited from every single answer that you guys have given. And I do want to ask if you guys could please put your contact information in the chat, inshallah, whether that be email or like phone number or even like LinkedIn, so our attendees can like connect with you guys if they have any personal questions or just like remain connected, inshallah. But yes, so that is it for our panel. Again, Jazakallah khair everyone for joining. And then please be sure to reach out to our panelists if you have any other questions or if you just want to stay friends with them, inshallah. Okay, well, Jazakallah khair. And thank you so much for coming and giving your time to us. Assalamu alaikum.
Thanks for having us.
Good luck,
Assalamu alaikum.
everyone.
Good luck, everyone. Walaikum salam.